Okay, so up to this point, we've really just been putting the pieces into place, and now we can bring it all together. So let's go back to our character. Let's go to animation. We'll click up here. We'll choose create new clip, and we'll call this climb. Save it. Then change this to something low, like only 12 frames or 10 frames per second, because it's not that long of a sequence. And we're just going to take our climb frames and put them into here. When you see this shrinking or growing, that's just me using the scroll wheel. Also, if you change the sample size, which is the frame rate, you'll also see that change. This affects the rate in which, changing this affects the rate in which the images are displayed. Just zooming in and out does not. Now, unlike the other sequences, we don't want to travel backwards, because this sequence, okay, unlike the walk sequence, this is a one-off and leads into a new sequence. So whereas some sequences, such as the walking or the idle sequences, the first goes to the last, and then the last is actually leading back into the first. So it's circular. You don't want that. This is just the opposite. It's linear, and then this actually leads into a different sequence. This is going to lead into the idle sequence. So you're going to go from one to the other. So how do we want this to work? Well, we're going to go back to our animator, and we're going to create a new parameter. Again, it's going to be a trigger, and we'll call this climb trig. So there's the climb one that we just made. So what's going to happen is we want the climb trigger to occur when you're in the jump. All right. So right click, make transition, go to climb, and this is going to occur. So here are the conditions. When, see, before there wasn't a drop-down box because there's only one condition. Now there's two conditions. So when the climb trig is true, we'll go from jump to climb. And now, this is what makes it, like I said, linear. We don't want climb to cycle through itself. We want it to go through once, but then we want it to go back to idle. And then at that point, so you're idle, you jump, and then you might fall back down. That's why this has to be here, okay? But if you don't, if you collide, then this should happen, okay? So we have to set this to be true. And then when the climb is done, you want to go back to idle. Right. So how do we make this happen? So we already, in our single script here, we already carved out an area where a collision is checked for. So we already said, okay, get rid of velocity, get rid of gravity. Now what do we want to do? Now we want to trigger that, we want to set that trigger to be true. So just as we set the jump trigger, it's just a recycling of an idea. It will be the climb trig. So get component, what component? The animator, okay? What are we doing with the animator? We're setting a trigger, okay? Which trigger are we setting? Climb. And again, you're not setting this to any value because a trigger is just yes or no, on or off, true or false. A trigger has occurred, like a toggle. So let's save that. And if I haven't made any mistakes, that should be all that it takes because we already set up the collision detection in the last one. Now it's going to be in the wrong location, so there's going to be a little bit more to it, but let's watch what happens. Pretty awesome, huh? So as you saw, they climbed, okay? But then it came back down. So this is where we now move the XY coordinate. So again, my apologies, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, but like I said, you have to differentiate between the location within the frame and the location of the actual object. So now that they're up here, we need to move the position of the object to match that new location. So this is a little bit of trial and error. Okay, brief splice there because I had to improvise to get around a glitch that I had not realized would occur, but fortunately there is a negligible impact on the visuals of the action. Because as we said, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get this kind of smooth animation from them climbing to actually be standing up there. So what you can do is within the animation, you can actually refer back to some code in the script. So let's watch how that works. So in the script, we're going to create a new routine. So outside of start, outside of update, outside of on trigger enter, let's call it void move after climb. And just it's formatted just like these other ones insofar as that you need the double parenthesis after it, and then you need the squiggly brackets after that. Okay, so all we're doing is we're moving the location. So transform dot position equals new vector 2, and it's going to be I believe it's like 0.6. You have to put in the letter F since it's a decimal, and I believe it's like 0.15. So the X and the Y coordinates. Now, unlike start, which happens when the scene starts, unlike update, which happens every frame, unlike trigger, which happens when this collision occurs, this only happens, so when you create your own routine, it only happens when you explicitly call it. So let's take a look at how you would call it. So let's go to the animation tab. And now we're going to modify the animation. So let's go down to climb. And I'll just delete this. This was here from my testing. So what happens is, so here is frame 6 of the climb, here's frame 7 of the climb, and then what we're going to do is we're going to create an event that says, okay, go ahead and move the location of the object. The problem is you get a jump where very briefly you see this frame, and since you've moved the horizontal and the vertical, it's in the wrong place. Okay. Now over here is the first frame of the idle, because again, we said we want the climb to blend into the idle. So depending on where you put the event, you'd either have the object be too high or be too low. So what you do is you create this blank frame in here. Since it happens so quick, I don't even see the blank happening. So to me, this is an acceptable solution. So you add a blank frame here, so that's this down here. And you just right click and you choose add animation event. It automatically opens a window that says, okay, what function do you want to assign to this event? There's the one we just created, move after climb. That should do it. So we jump, climbs, perfect. So nice and smooth. So because you didn't see it, because I put in the blank, like I said, if you don't put in the blank, you either have a frame where they're way up here or a frame down here, because as I said, the climb is really a trick. You're having the player, you're having the image raise up on the screen by moving them within the frame, but the XY coordinate wasn't actually changing. So this is where you have to pay the piper, so to speak, where you then have to say, okay, we now need to move the XY coordinate without actually having it appear too high up here or too low down here. So by putting in that blank frame for one brief moment when the event is moving, you don't see it because it's blank. So like I said, I think it's smooth enough. I don't think it breaks the fidelity. It's certainly your choice what you want to do, but it's a simple enough solution. So let's run that again, but I think that's about it for what we wanted to accomplish with this, because they go from this animation to that animation to that one to that one, and it's fairly smooth. So again, the burden is really on the artist, making sure that each frame blends into the next sequence. So the end frame of this one blends into this one, so on and so forth. So I think that's about it. If there's any other requests you want, just let me know. I think I might do maybe one more because we said that, okay, rather than automatically climbing, maybe you should just hang there and you have to press up on the up analog stick to make it climb. So that really wouldn't be that much harder because you still have this checking it, but then you'd have a separate check in the update section that also checks for the up being pressed on the analog stick. So like I said, maybe I'll do one more to do that. If there's anything else, just let me know, but that about does it.